What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to Down to the Wire. I'm your host, Brian Costa, and we have got an amazing show in store for you tonight. Uh, I am not going to lie, it has been a while since I've been on the air, and really not going to lie to you. This isn't the first time I've tried to restart doing my show since I've gone on my hiatus. I know I said in prior shows that, oh, my schedule might be a little messed up. I have gone probably 3 months without doing a show. So I do apologize for that. But I am excited to talk about a lot of stuff going on in the NFL right now. We just had the NFC and AFC championship games. So we'll talk about that and do a little Super Bowl preview and so much more. But before we do that, I want to welcome today's guest to the show. He's been a regular before, and I'm glad to have him back on. The one, the only, Mr. Chris Dring. Chris, glad to have you back on the show, man.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the invite. It's always great to come on and talk about, whatever we usually talk about on Down to the Wire. And we got a good show in store today, so I'm excited.
Absolutely, man. So before we start things off, I just want to say if you guys are not following us yet, make sure you go follow us on all our socials. So we're on Instagram as well as streaming services like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. So if you want to follow us, you can go to our Instagram at down.to-the-wire, and you can find all those links in the link in our bio. So make sure you go there. So Chris, once again, glad to have you back on the show with me, man.
Glad to be here.
First things first. So the AFC and NFC championship games went down this past Sunday. And I think this is the Super Bowl that, besides people living in Kansas City and San Francisco, that nobody wanted. And it's a real shame just because of, what we've seen, because of, just repeated history and kind of this now. But I don't know. What's your overall take?
Well, when people ask me about who I thought was going to win, I said, well, I want the Ravens and the Lions to win. But
yeah,
my prediction is I said it was going to be San Francisco and the well, no, actually, I said the Ravens and the 49ers. And I guess we can start out with the AFC. I was just really disappointed in the Ravens as a whole, their performance. Sure. Lamar Jackson, I feel like it's like a reoccurring theme every year. It's the same thing. He just disappoints.
Yeah.
And it just shows like how good of a quarterback that Mahomes really is, honestly, because he's got receivers that I wouldn't say that they're very great. I don't know.
No, I mean,
they don't have many bright spots there.
No, what I can definitely say is that the Chiefs receivers that we've seen, in this iteration of their team is definitely not as strong as they've been in years past. I think that the Chiefs teams that we're used to really just used to overpower you in the receiving department, thanks to guys like Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, and just other names like that. But what this team has turned into is more of a ground and pound team, really relying on guys like Isaiah Pacheco a lot more. Even a Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still getting meaningful touches. And then when they need to, they dish it out to Travis Kelce, who, has struggled this season, but kind of has come alive in these playoffs. So I'm not going to lie. So at the start, I've done this for the, probably about like the past 10 or so years now. Like I do like this kind of Super Bowl, like bracket with my family, and it's kind of just to see who gets like the winner. And I think for the first time accurately predicted the playoffs for myself from the divisional round up to the Super Bowl. And that included me having KC go into Buffalo to beat them twice in a row and going to Baltimore to take them down and go back to the Super Bowl, which, surprised a lot of people. A lot of people said there's no way that Kansas City can survive in Baltimore. Lamar's had an MVP season. And the reason I picked him over Baltimore was the same reason I picked him over Buffalo. And it's just that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have not, in my opinion, had a defining playoff moment. They've had good playoff games where the other team really hasn't shown up. I know Lamar had that against the Titans a couple years ago where he, ran like crazy and they blew him out. But
yeah,
I just haven't been able to see Lamar Jackson and especially Josh Allen in a kind of a do or die game really show up and, dominate. Like you saw it when Cincinnati went into Buffalo and took them down, and now you see it again as and now you see it as
remember that,
and now Lamar Jackson lays an egg, in potentially the biggest game of his career so far.
Yeah, it was like pretty tough. I mean, especially that last interception he threw in the end zone. It was
Yeah.
just a tough watch. He was frustrated with himself. He knew he should not have thrown that.
Mm-hmm.
And just as like a casual fan, 'cause obviously the Patriots are nowhere near the
No.
playoffs, but I just as a casual fan, I wanted to see a different team in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I really did. And I have nothing against Taylor Swift. I got nothing against her. I'm just kind of I just didn't really want to be seeing her all the time anymore. I got, good for them, but they're promoting her more than the Chiefs right now, and it's kind of crazy. I can't blame the NFL for doing that because I would do the same thing if it was
No,
if I
yeah.
was them. But
No, so I mean, like, listen,
I don't know.
I honestly don't have too much of an issue with it either. I think it's just kind of like become just kind of a meme at this point. Like,
Yeah.
I even saw Colin Coward say, like, on average, she's like on the television for the entire 3 hour broadcast for like 25 total seconds, which I was like, I
Well,
couldn't believe that was real, but it's because they do like 1 second, pan over clips after each Kelsey catch.
I
So,
do want to say when he scored a touchdown, that immediately
oh yeah,
they showed her in
well,
the
that's what
suite. So
that's what it's become now, and I think that
yeah,
we I mean, as sports fans, we've been accustomed to seeing, different celebrities get highlighted at games for years now. Like when Jack Nicholson was going to Laker games or just, different things along that kind of in that nature. Like LeBron when he was at like the World Series and stuff, like
yeah, yeah,
they would
yeah,
always
yeah.
flash up to him in the box, like
Of course,
celebrating,
yeah,
doing stuff like that. I think it's just the fact that especially with it being the NFL playoffs, everyone is now fixated on these games. It's not like a routine
yeah,
baseball or
yeah.
basketball game where it's just, it's on and you kind of like, if you're a big basketball fan, you'll notice that all the time. But I think with
Mhm.
everyone, really hyper fixating on the NFL right now, it's just become more and more apparent.
Yeah,
Which it's probably not the biggest deal.
I
I
don't
I
know.
really don't chalk it up to much. And I
No.
mean, listen, as a Patriots fan, we saw very similar levels of success with a team like the Chiefs for, the 20 plus years that they were
Oh,
on
for
their
sure.
run.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not going to say like, I'm not going to look back and be like, oh my God, like how, like, this is not fair that the Chiefs are doing it. Cause like we did this for 2 decades.
Oh, yeah.
And
No.
I understand it. So like I'll give the
Yeah.
Chiefs their props for the way they're running things. Like they were able to adapt when they got rid of a guy like Tyreek Hill
Mhm.
and completely revamp their offense. And I give Andy Reid a lot of credit for that because a lot of teams they lose a guy like that and they wouldn't be able to recover, or they'd make some, very like risky trade to try to bring in some other star receiver to try to
Yep.
appease Mahomes. And if that doesn't
Yeah.
work, you're gonna potentially risk Patrick walking out the door. And
That is something that they cannot afford.
no, which
Definitely not.
which I think that they knew, and I think they said, okay, like if we can't have Tyreek Hill on this team, if we can't lure in another star receiver, how else can we get Patrick Mahomes in this offense to work and be, a championship caliber team? And they figured it out with that Pacheco, run first offense. I've talked with a lot of people at my work. For those who don't know, I work in athletics, and we've kind of said that this Chiefs team has a lot of similarities to the Patriots team that won their sixth title at the end of the dynasty that won 13-3 against the Rams, where it was
Oh,
very
yeah, yeah.
defense heavy and, a run first team, and you kind of dish to the tight end when you need it,
Yep.
which is exactly what
That's
Tom Brady
exactly what they
did.
did.
Yeah. So it's kind of an exact blueprint because this is the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has really had ever in his time in the league. And they've been able to ride that all the way to a championship. So as a total team effort, you can't fault it.
No, I mean, the Chiefs, I feel like they're going to be around
Yeah.
regardless of what Travis Kelsey ends up doing with. I heard some retirement rumors before, like a few weeks ago. I don't think he's done just yet, but he's not going to be around for probably more than like 4 or 5 years max.
No, I think that
So
he's going to end up trying to chase
I don't
down
know,
Rob Gronkowski's record. I think that's what he's going to end up
probably.
going after. I mean, he went on record saying like, "Hey, I want to get 4 because everyone compares me to this guy Rob Gronkowski, and I want to tie him."
Yeah,
Which I'm like, fair enough.
I can't blame him.
Yeah, personally, as a
Can't
position,
blame him.
I mean, I think that Kelsey does a lot of things great as a receiving tight end. I think as an overall tight end, though, Gronk is the better overall, like at the position. Not to like discount what Kelsey can do, like blocking whatnot, but I think
Yeah.
that as a traditional tight end, if you factor in the blocking and the catching and everything that goes into that, I got to give the props to Gronk. He was just a freak.
He was. I wish he had a longer career, but it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're built, when you're a guy that's built like that,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
just have to expect the injuries. And I know he probably wishes the same, but it
Yeah.
is
No.
what it is.
Injuries definitely did riddle his
Yeah.
career, and that does suck. Um, But what I will say is that everyone for years was saying, oh, we got to just end the Tom Brady madness. He's always in it every year. Like, we got to get somebody else in it. And eventually, when Patrick Mahomes kind of went on and had his first Super Bowl run, they said, oh, look, it's like a brand new era in the NFL. Like, the young kids have arrived. Like, here we go. And instead, what ended up happening is all the similar roles that kind of happened in the last kind of generation of the NFL with a Tom Brady, a Big Ben, a Phillip Rivers, a Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
All of those similar roles are starting now trickle over into these new guys where Patrick Mahomes is just the dominant quarterback who is routinely going to Super Bowls. Joe Burrow is kind of right there neck and neck with them, and I think is a bigger competitor than Josh Allen when he's healthy. Like, everyone tries to chalk up Allen Mahomes to the next Brady Manning when I don't believe that whatsoever. I think that's more just Brady Rivers. Where
see, that's a more accurate comparison because like every time
or Brady
play each other, the Chiefs
Brady,
win.
Big Ben. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's just like, oh, Big Ben or Phil Rivers, they might get one on you. Like, they might sneak one on you. And it's like, oh, shoot, like, yeah, we got to be on our game now. But for the most part, like, as well as the other guy might play, you kind of know who the best player is.
Yeah, there's a clear cut. I mean, Bills actually. Speaking of the Bills, I do want to mention this. Stephon Diggs.
Yes.
What happened to him? Seriously, like he dropped a crucial pass that was thrown very well right into his hands. I can't fault Josh Allen for their loss to the Chiefs. I really can't. Stephon Diggs is the reason why they lost that game. I will stand by that, and I think the Bills need to move on from him. I mean, they want a chance because if you look at his numbers the past 7-8 weeks, he didn't even hit 100 yards. I don't think once.
I mean, Stephon Diggs is now turning what, 30? Yeah, he's turning 30. So like
with his age, he's just
and I mean, and like, listen, honestly, with like the way medicine has gone, it's not like 30 is like what it used to be in terms of primes where guys drop off. You can usually extend your prime now to like maybe even like 33, I'd say, and then you start to see some drop off, especially at a skill position like a wide receiver. But I mean, it's still he's been, this dominant for a number of years now, especially even dating back to his time with the Vikings, which seems like a very long time ago now, which is crazy because that's all like people used to associate him with. So
I mean, obviously he had that catch.
So
to win it.
So he's been making plays for a while now. And I mean, you're only going to expect that's going to eventually drop off. Now, do I think that the guy is toast and is just like Julio Jones now? Just trying?
Definitely not.
Yeah,
no,
it's not. That's
not what I'm saying.
It's nowhere close to that. Like, it's not like Julio Jones like this year with the Eagles where, he was really just a shell of himself. It's not like that. But like you did see some drop in production this year, and that could just be chalked up to a lack of chemistry with Josh Allen.
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's really tough because I hear so many statements from him. It's he wants out or he wants in, he wants this, then he comes out himself and says that he's got no issues with anybody and he wants to be here and he loves the Bills and the fans and the organization and whatnot. But then he gets into like fights and stuff occasionally, and he's just I don't know. Like if I'm the Bills, he can't be your wide receiver one going forward if they want to win. Like this window is they got to use it while Josh Allen is arguably in his prime right now. I just think they need to shake it up because it's the same result. I mean, lose to Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he says all the right things on camera, but at the end of the day, like, actions speak louder than words. Yeah. And when you see him slamming his helmet on the sideline, chewing out his teammates, that speaks louder than him going in front of the media and saying, "Oh, I'm a team first guy," when you're clearly displaying the opposite of that.
I agree 100% with that. I just don't know. Just you mentioned it. I just forgot. I know this isn't the games this past weekend, but it's just something that I wanted to mention about the Bills because I feel like they could have won that game. If he caught that ball, it would have been a whole different story. Like that was a great game as like a casual fan watching that. Great game.
Yeah, no, but I still do think mentioning someone like Stephon Diggs is something of note because when you look at a team like the Chiefs, it wasn't just Patrick Mahomes and those guys, and he wasn't the only guy that bought in and really, balled out for his team. Essentially, everyone on that team, except for that one guard that always seems to jump off sides. I forget his name. It's not coming to me, but everyone else really just shows up and knows their role and they execute all the time. And there really isn't any lack of consistency besides a guy like a Kadarius Toney. I mean, that is a liability,
He
but
might be one of the worst players in the league.
yeah,
Seriously, like
that's
he's so bad.
like he's a liability, but at least the Chiefs had enough enough wherewithal to say like,
Yeah,
okay, we're sitting you
yeah.
down. Like,
Well, he didn't even play this past weekend.
yeah, like they knew to like sit him down.
So
So like it wasn't even like a question. And personally, like if you're talking about like an impact player, like yeah, Kadarius Toney was great for them last year during their Super Bowl run, but um, if you want to,
this year
yeah,
though,
this year he's been a
he
non-factor.
cost him a game.
Yeah, he's been a
He literally
ghost.
did.
Yeah, he's been a ghost. So like you don't really even need to like I wouldn't think of him as much as like a
Mm.
Stephon Diggs or anything like that. You don't game plan for Kadarius Toney.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not. They're not even close to the same level of player.
No,
Stephon
exactly.
Diggs is a great player.
Yeah.
Still like one of the top receivers in the league. I just think it's come to a point where the Bills have had the same result the past few years, and you just have to change. You can't run it back. You can't keep running it back as Josh Allen gets older,
Yeah.
and some of these, especially guys on their defense, get older. And Von Miller, I don't know why they're paying that guy that much money, but I don't know what the stat is off the top of my head, but there was a crazy stat of how much he made per or I think it was like either each game or like each tackle. I think I don't know if it was because he missed so many games. He was in legal trouble and he had injuries.
Yeah.
So it was just a whole thing. But he made so much money and he barely played.
Yeah.
They gave him all that money, just taking up their cap space.
Yeah, I think they gave him like close to a 6-year contract after
Crazy.
which that comes after he was spent from, winning Super Bowl with the Rams. Like after that,
I know.
some people had thought that he was going to borderline retire.
I can't believe no. Well, that's I thought so too. And then I said 6 years is like, am I reading this correctly? Is this like a like accurate report?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
From what I was
Crazy.
from what I was able to make out of it is that they thought, all right, like we can get like maybe like 1 to 2 years out of him, which have gone by now, by the way. And they thought, okay, because they thought they were really close to that Super Bowl push, like able to really compete with the Chiefs and take them down. And I think they saw Von Miller on the market and they said, all right, like we have to convince this guy with enough money to not retire and phone it in to get him to come here. And they said, okay, we were just going to throw a bag of money at you. We need you to ball out for 2 years, which didn't happen. And the rest will just
definitely not.
And the rest will just we'll just make a do with it if it gets to Lombardi. So
6 years is just
it's a rough contract. It is a very rough contract
because no one wants to trade for that.
No.
And is at this point, how much is Von Miller really worth for the Bills? You know what I mean?
I can't even tell you.
And I do want to mention though, Gabe Davis. I know he's not a fantastic receiver,
sure,
in some people's eyes. He didn't play. Sometimes he has those big games like he did last year. I forgot. I think it might have been against the Chiefs actually.
Yeah,
he had a huge game last year. He wasn't there. So they were relying on Diggs and their rookie tight end. What's his name? Dalton Kincaid.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic player. I think he's going to be like one of the best in the league in the next few years. But
he's really something.
They're relying on him, and I don't know.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of parallels that you can make between the Bills team that Kansas City just plowed through and the Ravens team as well, where you have a star quarterback and you have even great skill position players, better than the Chiefs, I'd say, but just the lack of execution. A guy like a Zay Flowers getting flagged for a taunting penalty, and then
that was bad.
And then a couple plays later, diving for the end zone, gets the ball punched out. So just not able to execute and making critical mistakes like that. So I guess my question for you would be, for someone like Lamar Jackson, who's had now multiple MVP level seasons, do you think that he can get over the hump and win the big game?
I think he definitely can do it. I know he might win MVP this year. I think he's
going to win it.
Might be the leading favorite.
He's going to win MVP.
He should.
He'll win it.
As much as I want to give it to like someone like McCaffrey or maybe even like a Tyreek Hill type of player.
Tyreek wasn't even a finalist.
That's crazy. See, Brock Purdy should not be anywhere near the MVP talks. That's another debate. Because we'll get to the NFC. We're not there yet. But
no, yeah.
I think that he can. I don't know if it's more of like a mental thing, but I mean, you saw the last game he played before this one. I think he played pretty solid.
Yeah.
He just had a couple of mistakes. I would know he wish he couldn't gotten that last pick back. They tried to hit I think it was Isaiah Likely in the end zone. It was like triple coverage. It's just like it happens. But I think that he'll get over the hump in the next few years. He's probably like in his prime right now, I'd say. Like midway through his prime, if I had to make a guess. I don't know how old the guy is, but I know he's been in the league for a couple of years. He's obviously a former MVP. Well, the answer, I think so. I just think he's got to lock in, man.
Lamar's 27.
Yeah, I mean,
he just turned 27.
He's definitely got a couple more great years in him, like, top 5 QB in the league years for sure. So I think he will. I don't know if it'll be next year, but I think he will.
Yeah, I mean, I think what a lot of people have to factor in is that the bar for success now is it's now like so early on in your NFL career because everyone looks at a Tom Brady, a Patrick Mahomes, these guys that won Super Bowls in their first, second, even third year in the league. And it's and now the bar is, well, you have to do that as soon as you get in the league. Where I saw an interesting video where they said Peyton Manning didn't win his first Super Bowl till he was 30 years old, which in his entire playoff history was known as being just a horrific choker in the playoffs. And that was his legacy up until he won that first Super Bowl against the Bears.
And some people say that he's a top 5 quarterback of all time. He probably is.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He definitely is.
I don't know enough about like the old QBs to really say. I just know that Tom Brady's the best, and he probably will be the best.
I mean, with the talent Peyton showed, I'd say so, but
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, like it definitely is up for debate with that, but I would say that, a lot of people thought that, people thought that he was a choker, like when he used to play the Patriots in that early on the dynasty. It was like, oh, he threw 3 picks to Ty Law and he can't get it done, and there's the shrug and everything like that. So that is something to look at with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see. I just think it's pretty good, like, to see that at least like these guys are pretty young and they still have a lot of time, because I enjoy watching them play. Lamar and Josh Allen and even guys like Joe Burrow. I feel like people just kind of totally like forgot that Joe Burrow existed with the whole Mahomes versus Josh Allen thing. And I just feel like we forgot how good that Joe Burrow is. Like he's another guy. He's a top 5 quarterback, I think, right now.
Yeah, I think people have really been trying to build up Josh Allen because of what he can physically, just because of his physical ability. Because as a physical human being, like Josh Allen's is a freak.
Unreal.
I mean, he's built like a tight end, but then he
incredible arm.
But then you see that 50+ yard running play he had back in the wild card.
Yeah.
So like he can make incredible plays like that happen. But at the same time, like it just hasn't translated into, playoff success yet, where Joe Burrow got to a Super Bowl, went into Arrowhead, took down Pat Mahomes. And I know Mahomes has given him his lumps too, but I mean, those two, I think, seem on more of an even playing field, even if Burrow doesn't match up talent-wise to Josh Allen, like in terms of physicality. But as a quarterback, I'd rather take Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I thought he was going to win MVP this year. Obviously, that didn't happen. Went down with an injury. He wasn't playing that well beforehand, but he started to turn it around. Then he got injured. So
that's kind of been a key. That's kind of been a characteristic of him, is that he has very slow early starts, but then they pick it up. But that
happened last year too. I remember that.
Yeah. But now, so that was kind of the result of the AFC Championship game. Chiefs move on. And now as we move on to the NFC Championship game.
Oh, man,
I feel bad for Lions fans.
I do too.
It's really painful to see because, I mean, they were so close to just getting their first taste of a Super Bowl. And, I mean, I was rooting for them because I never thought I would see a Lions team this successful in my lifetime. And, even being a New England sports fan, it was like, how can you not root for these guys? They've been through absolute crap. For like, however, just for decades now. They hadn't won a game, playoff game since I had been alive. I think the last time they had won a playoff game was 1992.
Yeah, no, I wasn't even close to born yet either.
Barry Sanders was still running for
Yeah, that's crazy.
So
long time, man.
So that was the last time that they won a playoff game. And man, they really showed a lot of promise this year. And I got to give some credit to Jared Goff. He, so from the time that he had that really just horrific Super Bowl appearance against the Patriots, he's really grown as a quarterback, and I think is more than just a system player, which a lot of people used to pin him as. I think that he actually can make, star plays and can stand out.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do think that younger him is still in there somewhere. And I think that we still see glimpses of it from time to time. And that did appear in mistakes in the championship game. But I think the real culprit in this game is Dan Campbell, who a lot of people have called Dan Gamble for the way that he goes for it on 4th down.
I somehow haven't heard about that one yet. Yeah, I've seen the memes. So.
Yeah, that was a big one. That
blackjack.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, hit me.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a big one that went on with him. And I'm not gonna lie, like the Detroit Lions have really gotten to this part on, taking risk, going for it on fourth down, not just settling for points.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that has been their philosophy the entire time, and that's been Dan Campbell's DNA. And I don't want to fault them for it because it got them this far. But I think as a coach, you need to recognize the situation and you have to sometimes adapt your game plan. What he decided to do is he said,
Yep.
"Okay, we have lived by this, so we're going to either live by it or die by it." It's a classic basketball term: live by the three, die by the three.
Yep.
They
Hear
died
that
by
all the time.
they died by the three. They decided to go for it, and on multiple
Yeah.
occasions where it seemed this isn't the right decision. And I know that there were commentators on TV saying like, "Oh, statistically, this is the best thing to do in these short
Yeah,
yardage
that's still.
situations." And sure, yeah, like statistically,
Yeah.
this guy might have a chance to go on and rush and get these couple of yards. But if you don't get it, I think that George Kittle made a good point about it. And George Kittle mentioned this in his post game press conference, and then Bill Burr, the comedian, actually
Mhm.
went on Twitter and he ended up saying like, okay, like then what's the statistics after a team goes for it on fourth down, doesn't get it, and the momentum swings completely to the other side? What's the statistics after that? And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's a
Oh,
very good
man.
point because I think I think what Kittle said is like, yeah, like does momentum translate from game to game? Not necessarily.
No, we saw it with the Ravens.
Yeah,
I mean, that's an
but
example.
what it does translate with is definitely what happens in the game. I think
Yeah.
that there is a feel factor that goes on. These guys are human beings, and just to treat it like an algorithm, you're going to get burned. And I think that a lot of the analytics people in Detroit got burned here.
Yep. I mean, it was a tough one. I also want to mention Josh Reynolds was another reason why they lost this game.
Mhm,
He couldn't catch. There were multiple times on third and fourth down he should have had the ball and he dropped it.
mhm.
That going along with the Dan Campbell decisions. I mean, that's just who that he is.
Yeah,
Dan Campbell is a risk taker. I mean, we know that. We knew that as soon as basically as soon as like the season started this year, we knew that. There's many
yeah,
examples probably that you could point to where he took the risk to say, hey, you know what? We're gonna go for it on like 4th and 4 at midfield or whatever. You know
mhm,
what I mean?
yeah,
So as much as I wanted the Lions to win, the better team won here.
yeah,
But I think they have a better shot at the Chiefs than the Lions did.
yeah. I do too.
I wanted the Lions to win though, so bad. Like
Yeah,
I was just like, man, like they have suffered for so long. But people are saying that this might be their only chance.
yeah.
I don't know about that.
Not people saying it. Their own coach went and said it in the post
Yeah,
game
that's
press
true.
conference. Dan Campbell stood up and said,
It's
yeah,
true.
and he just goes, "Yeah, this might have been our only shot." And I'm like, as a coach, who the hell says that? Who says
That's
that as a
yeah,
coach?
I'm gonna totally disagree with that. I mean, you got a young running back in Jameer Gibbs. David Montgomery, he's a solid back too. They got a good rotation there. Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 10 receiver, arguably.
No,
Jared Goff is not too old.
I
Like,
mean, listen,
I
like
don't know.
honest to God, there might be some honesty in there because listen, I mean, the NFC North is going to start to really build up now with Jordan Love showing a lot of promise in
Packers
these
looked
playoff
really
runs.
good. They should have beat the 49ers too.
Yeah,
That was yeah.
yeah, the Bears are most likely going to go out and draft a top round quarterback that could, either make or break the franchise. And
I don't
then,
know.
and then
That's a yeah.
And then who knows
Maybe.
what the Vikings are going to do? Maybe they re-up with Kirk Cousins, bring him back, and they're just in the fold. So yeah, I'm not going to say that it's a sure shot for the Lions, but the fact that your own coach goes out there and says to the guys,
It's
"Yeah,"
crazy.
and just says, "Yeah, guys, we're cooked." I'm
That's
like,
crazy. I
that,
don't know.
like I don't know, like I thought you're supposed to like motivate these guys, and
Fair enough.
even though this isn't going to be the same team going forward, I feel like you should at least, I don't know, give them some inspiration, be like, hey guys, that was a hell of an effort this year. We've put on one of the best seasons that Detroit has seen in recent memory. A lot to be proud of, and I think that we can build a lot going on from here. I like just some BS like that. I think would have
That's
worked.
yeah, I mean, I feel like he's kind of he was like kind of still like locked into the game and he
Yeah.
was like he really wanted to win. I could tell, he just he really wanted that.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I mean, he knows that he was probably the reason why they lost.
Mhm.
And I don't know. So, I hope that the Lions are back in the NFC Championship in the next few years.
Yeah. I mean,
Will that happen? I don't know. It's really hard to tell
this is
because
this is
football is unpredictable
this is
sometimes,
Detroit
so
we're talking about.
exactly. We don't know. I did not expect them to be this good.
No.
Yeah, I knew that they'd be a playoff team. I
I
didn't
per-
know that they're going to be this good though.
Everyone was talking
I
about the
don't know.
Lions this year, and um even in last year's offseason, I was like, I'm not going to believe it till I see it. And, they proved me wrong.
Hey,
So
last year they sent Aaron Rodgers packing, so I thought they would
yeah,
make the
but
playoffs
yeah,
this
but
year.
I thought that only meant so much. And I mean, I was like,
Fair.
okay, cool. But you know what? They took care of business, and you got to give them credit.
Yeah, for sure.
But now we have
Yeah.
Niners, Chiefs, Super Bowl.
Oof.
Quick predictions. Who do you got?
This is very tough. I haven't really thought about this much, but I think as much as it pains me to say this, experience is going to win out and the Chiefs are going to win.
Mm.
Brock Purdy is going to fold. That's what I think is going to happen.
Okay.
I don't hate the guy at all.
Sure.
I'm just a critic of him because he's kind of everything's gotten inflated by the system.
Sure.
San Francisco's probably got the best system in terms of like if you put a QB in there, I don't want to say people have been saying, well, they would have had if they had Mac Jones, they would have been here. No,
yeah,
I don't think so. They would have lost to like the Packers. Mac Jones is not as good as Brock Purdy, but we saw it a couple of games. They dropped easy picks, could have been there. And I don't know the health of Deebo Samuel and everyone else because I know there's been a couple injuries. I think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah.
I think Kansas City wins by a field goal.
Mm.
I'll go 27-24.
Nice.
That's score prediction. I want the 49ers to win, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs. Unfortunately, that's my pick.
There you go. I will actually. What I'll say right now is I'm hoping, because I mean with my schedule it's been kind of crazy, but I am hoping to at least do a Super Bowl preview show. So part of me wants to hold off on my guess, but I will say that I have been back and forth, and I think it's going to be a good game either way. So that's what I'll say right now. If I do my Super Bowl preview show, I will announce that. If another conflict comes up, I'll make an announcement on the Instagram of my pick and everything like that. So
I let them know,
So I guess that's my plan. But so Chris, that was a good breakdown right there of the AFC and NFC championship games.
Yeah.
Before we carry on with some coaching news in the NFL, there was a topic you wanted to discuss, which happened earlier in the playoffs, which involved one of the games being exclusively on streaming. So that was the Dolphins and Chiefs wild card game. It was in the frozen tundra, basically in Kansas City when it was negative, and you were only able to get it on Peacock. So I don't know what was your whole take on that? The fact that you could only watch an NFL playoff game by having to pay a fee and sign up for a streaming platform.
Obviously I don't like it. Yeah. Most people don't like it. I was able to watch it because somehow, I was in Florida with my dad, and I guess somehow we got it through like our internet or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to pay for it. You somehow had it already through something. And they said it was like the highest streamed whatever, like the highest viewership on streams or whatever. But the amount of people that watched it through different websites like Stream East or whatever it may be, like is in like the thousands, probably the millions. And it's like, that's what's going to happen. It was the lowest viewed playoff game. I saw the numbers, but that was only from that. I feel like it was probably the same, but people were watching it through whatever.
They had other means of watching this game. I will say that, because I will say this. I had different people saying to me like, hey, how do you sign up for this? And I'm like, I'm not going to sign you up.
It's pretty easy to figure out how to sign up for that.
I'm like, you'll be able to watch the game. Just trust me. You'll be able to watch this. So that to just keep it make sure this show stays up. All in all, I don't think it's a great idea to have a game exclusively on a streaming platform. I know that, I know that you're trying to get viewers and trying to get people involved, but this is only going to I feel like this is only going to make people alienated and really just hate you. Especially because Peacock, I know they're trying to add on more originals right now. I know they added on the Ted original show, which I haven't really watched much of.
I've seen some clips from that. It's actually pretty funny. I might actually have to watch it.
It does look funny. I will say that, but it doesn't look like there's enough content on there to have me be like, oh yes, I need to get on. Like if Netflix or even a Hulu, I think, said okay, we're going to do this. Even an Amazon Prime, which has started to do Thursday night games, said, hey, we're doing this. It has enough extra content that I could be like, okay, cool. I'm willing to do it. But until Peacock really can compete with those other streaming platforms, which I don't know if it ever will, I'm not like, completely sold on saying, yeah, I want to go. I'm willing to pay $5 to go watch this.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary to think about what they can do with the streaming service stuff because now you got to think, well, will they put 2 games on there next year?
Yeah,
My dad brought up the question like, well, will they ever put the Super Bowl on there? I said,
that's a
I
good.
said, I said, I don't think so because of the amount of money at stake in just everything. Like, I just think it's too big of an event. It's like one of the biggest events like every year.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think it might be the biggest probably for TV numbers. I mean, I don't know what else is up there.
arguably, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the only way I see it being the Super Bowl being exclusively on streaming is if Jeff Bezos just throws trillions of dollars at the NFL and
It
says
throws,
and says
yeah.
we're doing this, and then the NFL
Mhm.
is like, okay, cool, who cares? We'll throw it on Amazon Prime, make it, and then people can cry and sign up for it.
Yeah. I just think that there's just
That's
way too
how the
much money at stake. Like,
yeah. I
who
mean,
has enough money besides Jeff
Jeff
Bezos? Like,
Bezos.
it's
Jeff
like,
Bezos.
exactly.
That's it. So yeah, it'll be
Yeah.
on Amazon Prime, and that's how they'll do it. So that's my best guess as to how it'll happen is he will say, "Okay, I have literally $1 trillion that I will give to you if I can have the Super Bowl on Amazon Prime," and that's how it's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope not. I really hope not this is not a regular thing, but I just wanted to mention that because of like everything, like all the talk that was surrounding that, and everyone was saying how much they hated that, and I was like, it is what it is. But I heard there was a couple broadcast issues as well. I didn't really notice it, but I know some people were complaining about like the actual broadcast. I wasn't really sure, but so we're gonna have to see. Next year, they're probably gonna put at least one on there, maybe two. So
Yeah, who knows?
see if the numbers drop. I
Yeah.
don't know.
But so that's enough with that topic. But Chris, before we transition into a little NBA news, you had mentioned well, one of the things that we had talked about prior to the show was that there's actually some new coaching hires and some coaching news going on in the NFL. I know that
Yeah.
the Patriots just recently moved on from Bill Belichick and brought in Gerard Mayo to lead this team. I know that he's already making some moves, hiring a defensive coordinator, and I know that today we actually just hired the Rams assistant special teams coordinator. So like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
so
I did
that's
see that.
so getting a guy from the
Pretty good.
McVay tree, that's a very interesting move. So we'll have to see how that ends up panning out. But the biggest move, I think, in terms of coaching hires so far has been that of Jim Harbaugh,
Yep.
has who made the decision to leave Michigan after winning the national championship. And after playing for his alma mater at Michigan, he's now going to go coach for a team that he actually quarterbacked in the Los Angeles Chargers, a team with a lot of promise, with a star quarterback like Justin Herbert, who, like you said, like Joe Burrow, is a guy that a lot of people just forget about because I think in terms of intangibles, Justin Herbert has, all the intangibles to be a star quarterback, but he's just in the middle of just a really poor run franchise.
Horribly run
Yeah,
franchise.
because
They're one of the worst.
they have all the
This is
weapons and I
crazy.
think enough for him to be to compete at a good level, but they have just made every wrong turn in terms of his development with the coaches they've brought in. Brandon Staley was an absolute disaster as a coach, and frankly should have been fired after that 31-point choke job in last year's playoffs. But somehow they managed to hold on to him for a whole other season up until the Raiders completely wiped the floor with them, and that's when they said, "Okay, enough
Yeah,
is
I don't know
enough."
how he lasted that long.
I
I
can't
couldn't tell you.
I can't imagine, but I think they just said, "Okay, like we're willing to ride with it." But they have completely blown this thing, and I think they said, "All right, Jim, we got to get you in here because." And this was another thing that I've talked about with other people outside the show is that Jim Harbaugh is almost like kind of like a cult leader, and he's able to just really kind of like, well, in all honesty, because he's able to really just bring all these guys together and just have one kind of collective group think, and then they go out there and dominate, and it's like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
die for your brother, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's what it really just becomes with him. And I think that he can establish it in the NFL because you've seen it when he was the head coach of the 49ers. First year there, they're back in the playoffs, and then he gets them to a Super Bowl where he inevitably did lose to his brother John. But he's a great coach. He's a great leader. And I think that he has all the potential to get Herbert right. But I don't know. What's your take?
Justin Herbert's one of the most like underrated players in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You can't blame him for why the Chargers are losing. Chargers defense is the worst in the NFL in a lot of stats. I know that. I mean, I haven't even looked it up. I just know that because of just you just look, they get so many points dropped on their head every game except for the Patriots, obviously, but we don't talk about that. And I don't know. I don't really know much about like the history of what Jim Harbaugh has done like in the NFL, but
Yeah.
I really hope that he can make Justin Herbert an even better player because like Herbert's like one of my favorite players. I really like watching him, and their receivers are kind of getting older. I don't know what they really want to do from there. Austin Eckler had a terrible season. I'm disappointed because he's also like one of my favorite players. I really good guy too. Really good, like just as a person,
Yeah.
really like him. But so I don't know what they're gonna do. I hope that the chart like I just just like a casual fan, I want the Chargers to do well because they've been also suffering. I know 2 Chargers fans and yeah, not much to write home about there, but I don't
No,
know. I just think it's interesting.
no, definitely
Good
not.
hire.
And I mean, listen, I think that Harbaugh has been able to lead a lot of good teams, especially dating back to those San Francisco days, and even in his college days, he's been able to just really turn a lot of different programs around after just a lack of success. And I think that he can do it in LA, but he just can't be hamstrung by ownership or anyone in the front office. If you just let
Mhm.
him go to
Yeah, yeah.
work, then he'll be fine. But if he has to deal with all the politics in the front office of of what he can and can't say or can't do, that's where you run into issues and what eventually causes it to fall apart. But if you can let him essentially come in, run the operation, and you hand the keys to him, I think he can guide you to success.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see. I think it's a good hire for them for sure.
Yeah.
It's just hard to really say what's gonna happen, but I think
Yeah.
it'll definitely make them at least slightly better. I don't know if we're gonna see that like an immediate impact, but
Sure.
definitely a few years on that contract. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
for
then
sure.
another, I won't call it a coaching hire because he hasn't been hired. It's a situation revolving Bill Belichick because a
Yeah.
lot of people thought that after his departure from New England, after they decided to mutually agree to part ways, which in kinder words was the fact that Kraft fired him. Um,
Essentially, yeah,
it's what happened. It
yeah.
was a firing. Um, a lot of
It's just
people,
like a nicer way of saying it,
yeah, a lot of
basically.
people were considering different, destinations for Belichick, which even included teams like the Chargers, thinking that he would have gone to go out to LA
Mhm.
and get Justin Herbert right.
Eh,
That didn't happen.
The Falcons was another one.
The Falcons was,
Mhm.
which surprising to me was the leading candidate for him. A lot of people thought, okay, this is where he's going to go, and then they turn around and end up signing Raheem Morris to be their coach, which a lot of
I
people
don't know who
can't.
that is.
Yeah, he's had some coaching
Or
experience before.
I feel like I may have heard of him, but I
Yeah.
don't really know much about him. So
Yeah, he's had a lot
yeah,
of coaching experience in the NFL before. He'll be fine in Atlanta, but a lot of people are surprised by the fact that the 6-time Super Bowl champion head coach is without a job right now. And I think that I know why, that there is a reason, that he's not getting these jobs right now. And frankly, when you look at it from a macro kind of scale, you can understand why he's not. And it's because Bill Belichick has priced himself out of a lot of these jobs and teams because if you look at what Bill Belichick has been in New England for these past 20 years, it's something that you really don't see with a lot of other franchises where you're the head coach, the GM, and really everything runs through you and not the owner. It really doesn't happen like that with a lot of other teams. I know that other
Mhm.
teams have general managers, but you have a head coach, you have a GM, the GM assembles the team, and then the head coach coaches. And
Yeah,
and it was a very and back in the day, you used to see that role be combined a little bit more, but now it's really, very specific. Like you have a defined general manager, you have a defined coach. And, I think a lot of teams said, like, are we willing to risk handing the keys completely over to Bill Belichick, who's in his mid 70s now? Some people would have thought maybe he's on the other side of the hill and questioning if he still got it. And I think that's a very fair question to ask. I am just surprised though. The one team that didn't really express interest in him was the Dallas Cowboys. I thought that was going to be a lock for him because I thought that he had a decent enough relationship with Jerry Jones. I thought that the two of them could really,
decent enough.
yeah. I mean, listen, I don't think Belichick's going to have like a lovey-dovey relationship with anyone, but I think that Jerry Jones would have had enough admiration and respect to say to Mike McCarthy, listen, it's not that you're not a great coach, you are, but we have a 6-time Super Bowl champion here. We're going to bring him in and see what he can do. And I think that was and that would have been the reason to probably let Mike McCarthy go and bring Belichick in. Instead, the Cowboys are just left in, really just mediocrity now. And
Yep.
I don't even know what they're going to do.
They said that they're keeping Mike McCarthy,
Mhm.
and I think like you said before, I think the reason why he didn't get hired is because I feel like he would want to be the GM, and I don't think
Yeah.
anyone. I don't his GM abilities. I definitely am questioning them.
Mhm.
I know he drafted Brady. I know he drafted Gronk and Julian Edelman and all these guys. I know that, but the past couple years, more misses than hits on picks,
Absolutely.
and it's just disappointing. And I feel like teams have seen that and seen his roster construction, and I think that I think that's why.
Yeah.
I don't think people are questioning his coaching mind. I think it's his GM mind, and a lot of teams have a GM already. I just don't think that they were. I don't know if Bill would be willing to do that on certain teams.
Yeah.
Because I know that was a question with Dallas. I don't know. It's like, well, will Jerry Jones let him run the team? I doubt it, but I don't know. I think it's a missed opportunity for the Cowboys though, for real, because Mike McCarthy, he deserved to be fired after that game. That was absolutely horrible.
That was a
horrific
horrible game.
performance on the defense and the offense. I mean, props to Green Bay on that one, but I cannot believe that he's keeping his job after that. That's crazy.
Mhm.
That's crazy.
Now, I know you mentioned the fact that Belichick drafted guys like Brady and Gronk and a number of great defensive players. And
Yeah,
while
for sure, yeah.
while that may be true that he was in the draft room making that call, something I learned after his departure was that it wasn't as much of a complete, you know, just like one-sided like decision, early on in the earlier on days of the dynasty. From the way it was kind of made out from different reports, is that it was more of a collaborative effort with guys like Kraft and other assistants early on.
Yeah.
And after the third Super Bowl, it was where it really started to lean heavily on Bill to make those picks. And you still had a lot of hits there, guys like Gronkowski. But I think in these later years, it really just became specific to Bill Belichick, Nick Caserio. And then once Caserio left, it was really just Bill again, making really kind of just sending in the picks and being like, yeah, sure. Oh, N'Keal Harry when Debo Samuel and DK Metcalf are on the board. Yeah, why not? Like
It still haunts all the Patriots fans to this day.
AJ Brown crying that the Patriots didn't draft him because he was such a fan. And then instead you take N'Keal Harry, man, or Tyquan Thornton.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And the Patriots receiver room has been so bad the past few years. Like, it's actually unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, Boutte just got, well, maybe arrested and charged with some stuff. We're not going to talk about that. But
Yeah.
but
I mean,
happened.
I mean, listen, Kayshon Boutte, like you can say whatever you want about him. I don't think he was going to be enough of an impact player for us
Couldn't
anyways.
get his feet in bounds, man. I don't know.
No, yeah. But yeah, like even picks dating back to like 2013, like you take a guy like Aaron Dobson out of Marshall in the third round when Keenan Allen and Travis Kelce are right behind him.
Man. You draft a kicker like in third round and
You
cut him.
Yeah, you
A
traded
couple years ago out of Marshall too.
You did this. Well, you did the same thing this year where you traded up and you took Chad Ryland.
Chad Ryland's the worst kicker I've ever seen.
He's awful.
Worst kicker I've ever seen.
And again, who got drafted after him was Puka Nacua. So there are plenty of good skill position guys available on the board late. And I'm not saying like it's easy to analyze his talent, because listen, like hindsight's 2020. You can look at all these picks and say, oh yeah, this guy worked out, this guy didn't. And sure, like, yeah, you can really like tear a guy's career apart for that. But like, I think with Belichick, it's gotten to a point where there are just some decisions where you have to just question what's going on. Like drafting up to take a kicker when
many misses, man.
When you have Nick Folk on your team,
who is another one.
Yeah,
I just thought of it.
Cole Strange was fine, but I mean, you have Nick Folk on your team who's a good kicker, and you decide to let him go. Goes to Tennessee, still has a great career year, and it was
why we got rid of him.
It was over basically a couple $1 million.
I don't know why we got rid of him. It's crazy to me.
Blows my mind.
And Chad Ryland, I mean, we've said it. He blew out the microphone in Denver, which is one of the funniest clips I've ever seen.
Sounded like a bomb went off.
So funny. I mean, he missed the netting a couple times. He missed clutch kicks. Like, this guy stinks, man.
Honestly, I mean, he really helped with the tank a couple times though, because
he was leading it for sure.
That Giants game was unbelievable. Where I think it was like a 25-yard field goal, and he just booms it. He just booms it to the left, which was one of the funnier things I've ever seen. Like I have never laughed at a Patriots kicker missing before, which I think just explains how dire the situation really got.
Yeah,
Like, the
no,
fact that I was laughing is actually kind of ridiculous.
I was dying laughing when he hit the microphone in Denver. That was so because I didn't see it at first. Like I saw
Yeah.
the kick, I didn't hear the sound, but I saw it on Twitter, and then it was just like, oh, Chad Ryland set off a nuke in Denver. I was
Yeah.
like, what? And then it's just,
It's one of the loudest mics I've ever heard.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
there's some loud doings. Like in the game I went to, I went to the game a few years ago against the Titans actually.
Yeah.
And whoever the Titans kicker at the time hit, it was loudest doink I've ever heard. It was, and people were talking about it after the fact, and it was just
Yeah.
like, oh, it was so loud there, and it was loud on TV too. Crazy. I don't know, but if the page, I mean, I don't know. We could go into a whole
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
talking about the Patriots and trying to fix them. We'd be here all day.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good topic for another show. So I think that's where we'll
yeah,
actually leave.
definitely.
I think that's where we'll leave this NFL discussion.
Yeah.
And Chris, move into the NBA, which is kind of your forte.
Mm.
You're a big Celtics fan.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, for sure.
So what are some things that you want to talk about with the Celtics as they head into the All-Star break right
I don't
now?
know. I just want to mention like they're. I mean, this team is unlike any other.
Yeah.
I got a guy like Kristaps Porzingis. I was at the game last night against the Pacers.
Mhm.
They definitely have some flaws. It's war. I'm not as confident as I was early in the season about this team though, because scored like 81, 83 or something in the first half. 129 they ended up with. Not great at all.
No.
And the fact that Tyrese Halliburton, who's the best player on the Pacers, at least
He is.
what I think, didn't play like I think the whole second half. He was on a minutes restriction. And you had Aaron Nesmith, former Celtic, as their best player last night, and he almost led them to a comeback.
Aaron Nesmith should never be cooking you.
Lost by 5.
Aaron,
he had 26 points, I think, or 28 or something.
I mean, listen, I like no disrespect to Aaron Nesmith. He did nothing in Boston. So
absolutely nothing.
So a guy like that shouldn't be torching you. It just shouldn't be happening.
I'm glad to see him doing well, but like you should not let him score more than 10. Like, come on, And I don't know. They got Derek White came up huge in the second half. He was big. It was just tough. Like they missed a lot of shots. They had a lot of turnovers. They just let him come back. It was just a tough one, but they ended up getting away with the winning. Horford never he wasn't there. Luke Cornett wasn't there. So we had Nemias Keita is our backup center.
Yes.
Who I actually like that guy.
Yeah.
I like the guy. I didn't think he was that good. And when we signed him, he's a serviceable backup.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we'll keep him after this year, but I do like the guy. But yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because I know you said you haven't done your show in a little while, so just giving a little update.
Yeah,
going into the new year.
Yeah, little NBA minute is great. I guess, Chris, one question I have for you about the Celtics team is that other than injury, which I think that it can be a concern for a lot of people, especially with the health that
concern,
especially knock on wood with the health that a guy like Kristaps Porzingis has had over his career. Other than that, what's the biggest kind of concern or just thing that you have as a Celtics fan you want to just keep an eye on after this All-Star break?
Well, I mean,
and want them to like really kind of shore up, I guess. Because they've been performing at the top of the league, but if there's one thing that kind of would worry you as a fan right now, what would it be?
Oh, I got it. This is it. Joe Mazzulla. That's I mean, outside of injuries, that's the biggest concern because Kristaps, like we've seen, he's gotten injured at least 3 or 4 times. Like he got hurt against Miami, ankle. He's had hamstring, knee injury. He's had everything. He got poked in the eye one time. Like, it's everything. Joe Mazzulla worries me.
Yeah.
He's a young coach, inexperienced, got ran out of the building by Eric Spoelstra last year. Yeah. I watched game 1. I was there for game 1.
Yeah.
It was an absolute choke job. And he was part of the reason. Doesn't know when to call timeouts still. He's getting better, but still. I just from looking at some of those lineups last night, he had like Pritchard and Hauser and like O'Shea Brissett. Like literally like their best players like was Derek White. Like he put Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday all on the bench at the same time. Put all these other guys, and Horford wasn't even out there because he didn't play.
Yeah, I
just question his lineup choices and the timeouts. Like it's really he's going to be a big part of whether this team succeeds in the playoffs or not. Because last year he was part of the reason why they lost, and the series were a lot closer than they should have been. Should have swept the Hawks. We should not have taken them to like 5 or 6.
Absolutely.
And the Sixers should not have gone to 7 either. And they were lucky to win that game. But
I think
I don't know.
Kendrick Perkins had a funny take on it where I think he said if you were to take Joe Mazzulla's brain and put it into a bird, the bird would fly backwards, and which is
That's
the
crazy.
yeah, that was a
Oh,
that was a
oh,
crazy comment, and I think that was a little too far. But I mean, yeah, like you do have to kind of question, what this guy can do. I mean, what
yeah.
before like what was it? His last head coaching job was what, like a Division like two school, I think it was.
I don't know exactly. I think he was an assistant on the Celtics
Yeah.
prior
Oh,
to
he had
this.
been
Like
an assistant.
it wasn't like someone that just got off the street. I
Yeah,
think
no,
he's
but I meant as like a
but
lead guy is
I don't
crazy.
know. I know he's from Rhode Island because I mean I'm from Rhode Island too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool to
Yeah.
see that and all. But actually he's from I think Johnston, which
Yeah.
is a couple towns over from good old Smithfield.
Yeah. Former Hendricken grad.
Yeah, yeah, yep. So I don't know. I want the guy to do well. I really do. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously as
Yeah,
a
you want
fan,
succession.
I really want the guy to do well. I just some of the criticism he's getting is not really deserved, but some of it is. And I think he's getting better for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah.
I think he's learning better than he was last year, but he still worries me.
Yeah.
These past couple games, especially, he worries me. But I think they have enough to win the championship. But we're gonna have to wait and see in a few months if that actually comes true or not.
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely. So we'll have to see how that all
for
pans out.
sure. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy that the Celtics are really now running Boston, I'd say, in terms of the sports
Oh, it's not
with the
close.
way the Red
Yeah.
Sox have fallen off, with the way the Patriots have gone by the
The
wayside.
Bruins.
No, the Bruins are there.
I went to
But
my first game and they look pretty good
but
the
yeah,
other day.
no,
They
definitely.
look pretty good.
I would say if you wanted to look at the way that Boston sports was early on in this century, where it was Red Sox Patriots, going back to back almost every year. Now it's
Flipped.
yeah, it's
We
completely
flipped the
flipped.
script.
It really is the Celtics and the Bruins running things. So
TD Garden's bumping
yeah,
every game.
yeah. Well,
Every game.
so again, we're gonna have to see how
Yeah.
that all turns out. But Chris, on my first show back, it is officially time to say that we are now down to the wire. So we are going to go through what we discussed on the show and send you
All
guys
right.
on your way. Chris, thank you once again for coming back on the show. Really do
Of
appreciate it.
course, man. I appreciate it. Got to talk some sports. We'll definitely have to do another episode at some point before the end of the year for sure because a lot of things are going to happen, especially we got like the NFL draft, the NBA draft, the finals, all that stuff, and the Super Bowl outcome, of course. But yeah, so I'm glad to be on, and I'm sure I'll see you again, or I'll be back on at some point soon.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
on today's show, we did a breakdown of the AFC and NFC championship games, discussed the Peacock debacle
Yep.
with the Chiefs and Dolphins games. We've talked a little bit about Jim Harbaugh going from the former Michigan Wolverines to the Los Angeles Chargers. And quick note on that, in terms of college football, I am actually a Michigan Wolverines fan,
Okay.
and not in
Nice.
terms of a
Nice.
bandwagon where I saw them winning and I hopped on. I've been a Wolverines fan before Harbaugh ever got there. And, it's just
Nice.
the fact that I was able to see a team like that go on, win a national championship. Awesome. So thankful for Harbaugh for what he did. I'm, sad to see him go, but I'm excited for the next era
Cool.
with more coming into town. So, little minute on that. We also discussed Bill Belichick not receiving nearly as much attention as we had thought from other teams. Where will he get a coaching job this season? Not likely. What will he do? Maybe a job at Fox, maybe elsewhere. Who knows what that's going to look like? But
Yeah.
outside of that, we also talked about the Celtics as they head into the All-Star break and some news with that. Chris did a great job leading that segment, so I really applaud him for that. But this is the end of the show. If you guys want to listen to us on the radio, you can follow us at WJMF 88.7 HD2 Smithville, Providence, or listen online at WJMFradio.com. From Down to the Wire, I'm Brian Costa.
And I am Chris Dring.
And we hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care and peace out.